Good morning, everyone, and I would like to welcome you all to our virtual summit, which is when even hunters are being hunted, predictive cyber defense against the inevitable. This event is jointly organized by value-added distributor Spectrami and Global CIO Forum. To begin the event, I would like to invite Mr. Anand Chowda, who is the CEO of Spectrami, to say a few words. Mr. Anand, over to you.
Thank you, Hardeep, and a big warm welcome to the new normal. Good morning to you guys. First of all, thank you so much for taking your time out to join this event. As we all know, we are living in a world of uncertainty. What we call is the new normal. We thought that everything would be over by 2020 and 2021 would seem to get us to the normal scenarios, but things are not happening. We see new and new variants of virus coming in, and the vaccinations are still to roll out in a way that many people can be vaccinated. But that's on the side of the human catastrophe. But if you look at in the cybersecurity world, the attacks have increased by 250% in the last 12 months, which means the attackers, the hackers out there are ready to exploit this human catastrophe and use it to their advantage. The environments in which we are all working have changed. We're all virtually working and in hybrid environments, and it is even more important today than ever to ensure that we secure our networks. We have today carefully crafted out industry experts to come and speak to you guys and help you understand how you can protect your networks in this new world. Without taking much time, I want to thank you again for being here, and I hope that you have a very informative sessions today. We are more than happy to connect you with you later to answer more questions that we can answer in this conference. Thank you so much once again. Thank you, Global CIO Forum. Thank you everyone for making this possible. Thank you. You're on mute, Hardeep.
Sorry about that. I was speaking on mute. Thank you so much, Anand, for your crisp and clear and inspiring words as usual. And again, I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy day on a weekday and be here with us. So. Usually, it's an honor for me because I'm hosting this event second year in a row. So either I did a good job last year or second year in a row, our marketing team maybe didn't want to spend money on a professional host. In any case, you guys are stuck with me for next 2 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hardeep Singh and I am a lead cybersecurity consultant. I have been working with Spectrami from last 4.5 years now. At this point, I also want to thank all of our sponsors of the event, Menlo Security, Cycletics, Securonics, and Checkpoint. I have been told that without you, this event couldn't have been possible, so thank you to all of you. So let's discuss why we are here today and why this event. By the way, last year, while explaining this part, the concept of the event, I went a little overboard. I had a boxing match with my CTO and I punched him on stage in front of 107 people. And after that, I never won any award. My salary is still the same. And I just realized I'm wearing the same suit and tie. So probably I'll take it a little bit easy this time while explaining what exactly is this event about. So Anand talked about a little bit. Anand talked about the panic situation in the world because of multiple different reasons. So let's try to understand what are the usual things which put us in the panic mode. Let's talk about the normal world first of all. Then we'll switch to the cybersecurity world. So in normal world, things like when your own doctor gets sick, that is a situation which generally put us in the panic mode. Or maybe someone like Cristiano Ronaldo forgets how to play football. Or maybe your electrician himself gets an electric shock. Now, these are the kind of situation which will put me in the panic mode for sure. Now, similarly, if we switch on to the cybersecurity world, then if we see some news like these, then of course the panic mode starts again. And in 2020, we saw quite a lot of these kind of news. Hence the name of our event, When Even Hunters Are Being Hunted. But if you notice, there is a subtitle of our event as well, which is actually the solution and the way forward to deal with this kind of chaotic situation. And that is predictive cyber defense. And the title is Predictive Cyber Defense Against the Inevitable. So prediction, it might sound like magic, or it might sound like storyline from a Christopher Nolan's movie, but in reality it's not. What exactly it is that analyzing the current events, data, patterns, and foreseeing what can happen in near future and just be ready for it. Let's take some examples. So again, I will take some examples from the normal world, and then we'll switch to the cybersecurity world. So in normal world, I am sure some of you, or most of you, or maybe all of you are familiar with this picture. If you are not, then let me explain. On 4th of February this year, Elon Musk tweeted one word, 4 letters, Doge. Everyone was confused, but it was actually referring to a cryptocurrency called Dogecoin, which started off as a joke in 2012. Now, when Elon talks, everyone listens. So what exactly all the cryptocurrency traders did, they started investing hundreds and thousands of dollars into Dogecoin cryptocurrency, hoping that if someone like Elon is endorsing it, then maybe something big can happen. And it happened. Within 10 days, the price of this cryptocurrency increased by 1500%. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Analyzing the current events, which in this case is this tweet, foreseeing what can happen in the near future, which was that maybe the cryptocurrency's price will go high, and be ready for it. And in this situation, the readiness was to invest in Dogecoin. And in the end, the traders ended up making a hell lot of money. So now let's switch to the cybersecurity world and complicate it a little bit. In cybersecurity world, let's take an example that tracking threat actors who are targeting your region, your country, your vertical, what kind of vulnerabilities they are exploiting, and fixing them ahead of time proactively is the most basic form of predictive cyber defense. Also, I would like to share one story. This is a real story about a person who is a firewall admin in a government organization. And for the security reasons, I will not take his name or his organization's name. I just noticed that he has joined this event as well. But for the sake of better storytelling, I will call him Spiderman. So, Spiderman, firewall admin, and working for a government organization. We all know last year, every one of us, we were working from home. The utilization of VPN became extremely high. But at the same time, a lot of exploitable vulnerabilities also came into the picture related to these VPN solutions. In that state, one of the Chinese threat actor campaign actually exploited the VPN of a government organization and got another government organization, and they got access to some of the very sensitive documents. Now, what Spiderman did, he read about it in a threat intelligence bulletin. Now, after reading that, what he did, he proactively started dropping all the IP address ranges which were coming from China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. And at the same time, he asked his team to put an extra factor of authentication on VPN, patch it to the latest version, and remove access of all sensitive documents from VPN. While his team was doing this, he started noticing that a lot of IP addresses from Taiwan were actually trying to connect to their VPN, but they couldn't get passed through their firewall itself, all because of Spiderman's early prediction. And with great power comes great responsibility. So Spiderman took his responsibility and did justice with it in the best way possible. And I have like maybe hundreds of examples from the normal world and the cybersecurity world to share with you, but I was allocated only 10 minutes. So what we have done in order to guide you on the path of this advanced predictive cyber defense approach, we have collaborated with some of the masters of cybersecurity. So let's see what we have in store for you today. So we'll start off with a keynote discussion on future of cybersecurity, and then we will have 4 sessions, 4 presentations, 20 minutes each, and the presentations will be about zero trust internet, improving SOC effectiveness, and predictive threat intelligence and protection against Gen 5 attacks. Afterwards, we will have a panel discussion with some of the CISOs of most renowned organizations of Middle East. And in the end, we have a quiz. And this quiz is actually for you, for everyone who is attending this event today. There is a catch with this quiz, and the catch is this. So what exactly is this? We will ask you, since we have 5 presentations, including the keynote discussion, which will happen in the beginning, from each of those sessions, we will ask you one question, which will be related to that presentation. And if you get the answer right, you will be able to win $100 of Amazon gift vouchers. So 5 questions. That means in the end of this event, you have a chance of winning $500 worth of Amazon gift vouchers. So you get to learn about cybersecurity, and at the same time, you will end up making some money as well. Win-win situation for everyone. So please pay close attention to all the presentations, because yes, this is something big which is going to happen towards the end. Some of the housekeeping rules of this event: all of you will be on mute throughout the event, but if you have any questions, and I would encourage you to ask the questions and keep the session interactive, you can use the Q&A section or the chat section of your GoToWebinar application. At the end of each session, we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Well, I guess at this point of time, I will conclude this unusually long introduction of this event, and let's get this ball rolling. So let's start off. First of all, our first presenter for today is no ordinary personality. Actually, I always feel kind of inferior whenever I'm introducing him. While working for Mozilla as a security engineer, he designed one CRL protocol, which is the default security setting for all the Mozilla Firefox users today. Later, he worked for Google, where he redesigned the way Google Chrome manages permissions. The security feature is being used by 1 billion users globally. While for many people, working for a company like Google is the end goal in life, he did not stop there. He's a board member in Al Bilad Capital and an advisory board member in Acalvio Technologies. He's founder and managing partner at Outlier Venture Capital. I have so much data right now that I can talk about him for another half an hour, but I guess it's time to hear from the man himself. Please welcome Dr. Mohammed Al-Meshika. Also, to join the discussion with Dr. Mohammed, I would like to invite another great personality. His biggest achievement is that he got to become my manager in 2016, and also he's the co-founder and CTO of Spectrami. He has knowledge about all cybersecurity, non-cybersecurity solutions available in the market, and he's a great leader and a mentor as well. But yes, biggest achievement, 2016, becoming my manager. Please welcome Mr. Sarfaraz Qazi. Over to you, Sarfaraz and Dr. Mohammed.
Thanks, Hardeep. I think so. I'll just wait for Dr. Mohammed to switch on his audio and video.
Yep. Thanks, Hardeep, and I'm very humbled by the introduction. I think you're just being too kind.
Well, Hardeep kind of missed on one important detail. You also happen to be the ex-deputy minister of MCIT and was basically laid down the architecture for what is the National Cybersecurity Authority in Saudi. So pretty much everything from a governance perspective in Saudi was pretty much a brainchild from your perspective. So it's always an honor, Dr. Mohammed. I remember 8 years back, it was the first time I met you, and then whenever I've spoken to you, it's been a great experience. So looking forward for this amazing session.
I look forward to it. Always a discussion with you, Surprise, is great, and now we're doing it virtual. It's a new world, and really excited to have a conversation about what is happening in cybersecurity and what is going on in the world.
Yeah. So, Dr. Mohammed, I mean, I think so. We can, call each other more of veterans of cybersecurity. I think so. We've seen trends in cybersecurity. Like, I remember attending a keynote session of Stu Ballmer, and he said there's a wave you need to ride, right? So every 5 years, 10 years, you see a wave which happens. And in cybersecurity, I think so. There are three distinct phases. I mean, you can slice and dice it in different manner, but three distinct phases I see, and I could kind of categorize them in decades. So 2000 to 2010 pretty much was the decade where security came really into existence, and people started. The first thing that people saw was prevention technologies, right? So we had the antiviruses, the firewalls of the world, which took precedent, and then that became the de facto standard. Till sometimes, I think so, early 2010 or late 2009, people started realizing, prevention is not enough, because attackers realized that, all I had to do was bypass the prevention I could go through, and then people started focusing on detection and response. And so detection and response was great because it allowed not only monitor what is bad, but what is good. And then people started adopting detection response technologies like vulnerability management, SIM, and a whole lot of other technologies, till the time the fatigue set in, right? Because you had so much data that could be consumed, and we started seeing people missing or having a great signal to noise ratio. And so right now, I think so we are at that inflection stage or very infancy stage of the decade of prediction, right? So I think so we see technologies, big data getting mainstream, analytics getting mainstream, and having the right ML models which are able to help deliver prediction. Of course, prediction is a very broad term. If there was one prediction I could do today was probably hearing somebody say you're on mute, right? Which Hardeep did, right? So prediction is there. So my first question to you, Dr. Mohammed, with your huge, vast experience, working at a global level, prediction, right? The decade of prediction, is that a hype? Is it a reality? And what do customers and the industry in general have to look forward to that?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question here, Safaz. So let me try to kind of like take a step back. And fundamentally, if you look at what is the role of a security professional in an organization, fundamentally the role is being able to stop the most important or most catastrophic attacks from an organization. And if you look at the word stop, if you're just simply reacting to every attempt, you're just going to be fatigued. You're just going to be like going and nonstop chasing of every person coming and knocking the door or not even asking and barging into this. Unless you start to have an ability to prepare yourself better, you will always play a whack-a-mole game. You're always going to be an attacker pops up, you're gonna whack them with the hammer, and then they disappear, and then they walk like they pop again. So like this is why prediction is just I think it's a very loaded buzzword that we're saying. However, it have always been the goal of any person in cybersecurity is just being able to know where's the attack is going to come from and what can I do to thwart it, to stop it, to slow it down and whatnot. And I think like a lot of companies right now just using that buzzword to sell their technologies especially with the massive abundance of ML, AI technologies and algorithms that helps those organizations do a little bit better. There has been some innovation there, but it's still we're still at a very early stage. One final thing that I'll just add on top of this, I think cybersecurity is not a pure science, and it's not a pure art either. It is a combination of both. It's what people say, like it's a craft. So there are some scientific things if you look at it in kind of like the way that systems is being designed, network is being designed, and things of that nature. This is the thing that you can fully automate without a human, do a lot of prediction in it. But there is a lot of art. There is a lot of work that goes into your experience, what we call cybersecurity tentacles are telling you, what are some of those IPs that you're looking at, TTPs that you see that are telling you this is similar resemblance of something that you've already seen, already know in the industry. So I think we're going to see a lot more of automation of machine learning is being used, which also creates a new set of problems like adversarial ML and things like that we can even talk about later in the discussion.
Sure. Very pragmatic answer, Dr. Mohammed. And you're speaking about how vendors talk about different things which are like very outlandish, and we've all heard that at some phase or the other, but it has become the new normal, right? Hearing the most outlandish claims from different vendors in terms of how they are the silver bullet trying to solve, make cybersecurity predictable. So, in your experience, which is the most outlandish claim that you've seen any cybersecurity vendor make, and what is the most underrated technology that you've personally come across?
Oh, wow. So whenever I see like a company say, oh, we're going to get rid of the human in your security operations center, I really laugh. I kind of like, you cannot fully automate what a cybersecurity center, operations center do. It is, again, like going back to my point, it is a craft. You might automate level 1 engineers to a large degree, but you cannot get completely the human out of the loop. As I said, it's a craft. It's just like when someone says, like, we're going to fully automate the way that do company evaluations. I know that's kind of like more of a business setting. Yes, there's a lot of things that you do, but you find two companies with the same discounted cash flows, one is valued 10x the other, because there's a lot of crafty things that you need to look at that traditionally algorithms don't look at. And I like, when I see this, it's most likely being founded, or the story is someone who's a pure business person and they don't listen to the engineers around them telling them, man, like, you've never been in a SOC, so maybe you're just kind of like thinking abstractively that you can automate the hell out of anything, but really, like you can't. You need to have some humans to address. Like, if you say that, you're fundamentally just saying, then we'll never be able to catch 0 days, because it's game over. 0 days don't have a playbook. 0 days cannot be automated. New attacks cannot be automated. So unless you want to live with that as an organization, anything that says like we're gonna fully automate the way that your security center work or replace the human is just a nice thing to have a conversation over dinner.
Absolutely. I think so. I kind of concur, because if you look at the attackers who are there and the defense mechanisms that is there, humans are absolutely needed. And although there will be levels of automation, but complete automation, at least for now, is way far off. Maybe when we reach to Mars, we'll probably see automation in cybersecurity. Who knows, right? But for my last question, I mean, this has been very, interesting in terms of some of the views. You talked about valuations of two companies, and that's what you do currently, right? Like, have this fund where you invest the most interesting companies who are going to give you returns. So, and maybe this is a takeaway for some of the audience, right? If we had to all take $1 million and give you and ask you to create into $10 million over the next 2 years, which technologies or which sectors would you hedge your bet on and probably do an investment? In other words, what are the most upcoming promising technologies that you are seeing in the horizon? And also it helps from a customer's perspective to look at where the trends are going towards. So that's my last question for you.
Oh, wow. So first I have to say, like, I cannot advise anyone where to put their money because I'll be annoying the regulators if I do so. But just speaking of what we see, I think there are fundamentally three buckets that are going to be really interesting in the upcoming decade. One is around what we just said. I think there's a lot of automation that is happening. The thesis that we have at Outliers and what we're trying to achieve is find companies that basically do human augmentation. By that, I mean there's like tons of things that a security professional does every day that are the same, that are repeated, they're annoying, and they just gotta go and to the interface of multiple tools and jump from one place to another. Well, all of this can be seamlessly automated by an augmented machine learning algorithms that you have. So it will make you far more effective as a security professional, whether you're an analyst at L1, L2, L3, or whether you're a manager and working at a higher level. So that's one major category that we spend a lot of time on. The second is we've all seen how the past decade had been a massive uptake of cloud. Currently in the US alone, there's 30% of software runs on the cloud. In MENA, there's 10% of software runs in the cloud. The next 70 or 90% of software that is gonna go, the number one concern of those organizations who are using software in their day-to-day business is security and privacy. So looking at that, we just invested in a company like 3 weeks ago that does runtime container-based security, which is helping security professionals to not fully say, oh, thank you AWS, or thank you this cloud, or thank you that cloud. I want to have my own security tools to continue to do runtime monitoring of like behavior of containers. So that is a major category that we're going to continue to see grow in size and opportunity. The third is whenever there's a new technology uptaking like ML, I hate to say the word AI, but just to kind of like put a lipstick there, there's going to be a lot of adversarial AI. So basically, if an organization uses ML to automate a lot of the interaction with customers, so some of those customers can be an attacker, and using this to pivot into your organization or extract data out of your organization. So a lot of that is growing and is going to be an interesting area to continue to look at innovation and the way to protect organizations in that space.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. So I think so we are just about to over of time, but so to summarize three things, right? Human augmentation, absolutely agree. That's the top of any analyst prediction in terms of the biggest problem they have is the human, not the technology part. Cloud security, no-brainer. Imagine 70% of technologies getting onto cloud. But third, which is the most interesting, adversarial ML, or who polices the policeman, right? Like you put in Jarvis, who's looking after Jarvis, or what if somebody poisons Jarvis, right? So very interesting perspective. Really loved this, and I'm sure pretty much audience had a wonderful time. I know we had one more question that you wanted for me, but I don't think so we have the time for that. But thank you so much. Hardeep, over to you if there's any questions for Dr. Mohammed from the audience. It's wonderful, wonderful. Dr. Mohammed, thank you so much. You're on mute, Hardeep. Second time.
Yeah, I'm dealing with so many buttons right now, and the most important button I always forget. Anyways, so thank you so much, Dr. Mohammed and Sarfaraz as well. Great take on future of cybersecurity. Yes, thank you so much. Apparently, we don't have any questions right now, so we will go ahead and move on with the next presentation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Moving on with our event, our next presenter started off his career as a software engineer in 1997. And then later he was on board of advisors for some of the big names of our industry like Netscope, Preempt Security, which was acquired by CrowdStrike, Morta Security, acquired by Palo Alto Networks, and he is currently the CTO of Menlo Security. Please welcome Mr. Kaushik Guruswamy. Over to you, Kaushik.
Hi, my name is Kaushik, and I'm Chief Technology Officer of Menlo Security. Today, I wanted to talk to you about some of the key challenges faced by organizations as they move their data and apps to the cloud, and how existing approaches to security are struggling to adapt, especially in a post-COVID world. Like many of us in cybersecurity and beyond, I've seen firsthand the rapid rate of change across organizations as a result of digital transformation. The use of cloud computing for key business applications and services has significantly reduced the reliance on hardware and enabled new business models and processes. The benefits of this move continue to be demonstrated, especially during the initial stages of the global lockdown, where companies were able to enable remote working for thousands of employees almost overnight, using collaboration tools like Teams, Slack, Zoom, and so on. Of particular note is the widespread adoption of cloud office systems such as Office 365 and G Suite, with Office 365 now used by 1 in 5 corporate employees worldwide. Gartner expects 70% of public and private companies to be using cloud email services by 2021. But this rapid change has also resulted in major security challenges. If we break down some of the specific challenges enterprises face due to digital transformation, they can be grouped into the following buckets. Users, specifically remote workers, are accessing more SaaS applications and so forcing changes to the way networks are architected, away from the hub and spoke model to a much more direct to internet approach. The question many IT teams are asking is, how do we let users connect to the apps and services they need without routing everything back through HQ? This move started with branch offices moving away from sending all traffic back over the VPN to a direct to the cloud architecture, and then has continued with remote workers. And it should be noted that prior to COVID, many organizations' VPN capacity was around 5 to maybe 7% of their entire workforce, which tells you that most organizations are not ready for a 100% remote workforce routing all traffic back to the corporate. But this change has also resulted in reduced visibility of user activity, traffic, and apps as on-prem security appliances are effectively blind. Malware continues to evade defenses. In fact, most organizations are now resigned to the fact data breaches will happen. This accounts for the continued spend on vulnerability management, EDR, SOC, SIM, and other incident response capabilities. Yet, if you pause and think about it, 90% of breaches originate from web and email. As mentioned, the move to O365 and G Suite, they provide for many advantages, but these platforms are still not able to fully protect against account takeovers, credential phishing, and ransomware attacks. If we look at the traditional enterprise network, the data center is at the center, around which the perimeter defenses are built. All traffic from remote employees, partners, and suppliers has to be routed to the corporate network in order to enforce centralized access controls and threat protection before they can access any cloud services or SaaS application. There's also the ongoing investment for MPLS services needed to connect branch offices to corporate network before the request to SaaS applications can be fulfilled. So while this data center-based approach does provide centralized control at the perimeter of a corporate network, it comes at a cost. The additional stress on security infrastructure running in the perimeter, including VPN concentrators, the impact on end user experience due to the additional latency incurred from backhauling traffic unnecessarily, And then the increased cost of deploying physical security appliances such as UTM, next generation firewall, SWIG, CASB, and so on. The rapid acceleration to the cloud, especially during COVID, has really upended this hub and spoke model. We now live in a any user, any device, any location, any app, any data world. If anything, COVID for many organizations has compressed the journey to this inevitable future from a decade to just a few months. This means security controls also have to be distributed around the world, closest to where the user's partner's offices reside. And access controls should be determined based on user identity, role, and authentication level. This user-centric approach puts the user in the center and distributes the security controls around the edge of the internet. Let's take a look at some of the options available to enterprises looking to implement effective security as they continue to migrate to public cloud services. There are established, best-in-class, on-premises security appliances that are being remade for the cloud. But this is simply just taking an inconclusive security architecture and moving it to a different place. It fundamentally doesn't change the security efficacy. While these network-based devices did a decent job protecting against blocking malicious traffic traversing the LAN, they have inherent limitations such as their ability to scale and support inspection of HTTPS traffic at scale, for example. New security architectures such as SASE, SDP, and Zero Trust networks have also appeared as a way to extend the coverage of these security controls to the cloud. Secure Access Service Edge technology, SASE, as defined by Gartner, allows organizations to better protect mobile workers and cloud applications by routing all traffic to the cloud. They combine network security functions such as SWIG, CASB, Firewall as a Service, Zero Trust Network Access, with WAN capabilities such as SD-WAN. However, these new architectures are still not solving the fundamental problem we have today, which is detection-based security products are not conclusive. Look, I've been around the cybersecurity industry for over 2 decades now, and if you really step back and think about it, the original firewall that could allow block ports was really the first and only security product that worked 100% conclusively. Since then, we've been going down the slippery slope of almost safe security model while continuing to restrict user experience and hampering productivity. Security still fails over and over and over and over again. With billions being spent, how does this happen? Why does it happen? It happens because security products today are inconclusive. That's the short answer. There's not a single product or technology in the world that can detect 100% badness reliably every single time. This slide shows a real-life example from one of the largest financial services companies in the world. They have some of the most advanced cybersecurity products and operations in place, and yet they've experienced these failures. These data points were captured over 180 days from an existing Menlo customer. Phishing links and emails passing through existing email gateways went undetected. Users accessing uncategorized and otherwise risky websites with no protection. And last but not the least, 30% of the links were categorized as benign at click time, only to be found malicious later on. To better explain the advantages of Zero Trust Internet, I wanted to walk through a typical example of malware being delivered via the web browser. With legacy approaches, detection, and maybe if you're lucky, protection, can only occur after the browser has fetched, executed, and rendered the web page locally on the endpoint. If a malicious URL was categorized as benign, or perhaps the malware signatures do not currently exist, or the behavioral and heuristic analysis fails to identify the threat at the time of click, the endpoint will be compromised. If we take a different approach, by leveraging remote browser isolation technology, you effectively have a zero trust internet with this isolation core running at the edge of the internet. It isolates the fetch and execute phases of the initial web request away from the rendering phase. This means any malware stays contained in the isolation core, and only a 100% safe sanitized version of the website is rendered by the local browser. Threats never reach the local browser where they could compromise the endpoint. So whether it's an email link to a phishing site, a Slack message, or a user downloading an unknown file from a website, every single request is safely isolated, regardless of whether it's good or bad. While isolation holds a promise of perfect security, it's not an entirely new concept, and people have tried this before. Vendors have tried to do this on the endpoint. Governments have cut the hard line and provided workers with two computers, one for the internet and one for internal use. Others have tried running two browsers locally on their machine. But in all cases, it was a drastic trade-off of user experience and productivity against better security. What sets Menlo apart is her ability to deliver isolation at scale while protecting productivity and offering seamless user experience. To finish, I wanted to leave you with an example of a major federal agency in the US who successfully deployed isolation to over 50,000 users across multiple locations in a very rapid manner. Over a 30-day period, they saw requests to over 8,000 malicious websites that were safely isolated, regardless of whether the URL was classified as risky at time of click. On average, 10 to 15% of requests to malicious websites were categorized as benign at click time. They saw a 70% reduction in original file downloads by providing a safe, isolated view of documents accessed via the web. This meant there was no need for users to download original, potentially harmful files containing macros, links, and other embedded malware. They also saw a 50% reduction in VPN connections. This has been achieved by enabling split tunneling, so traffic to on-premises application continued to flow through the VPN as before, but the internet-bound traffic was sent directly to the internet, but safely isolated via Menlo's isolation-powered cloud security platform. Thank you for your time today. If you would like to find out more about Zero Trust Internet, please visit try.menlosecurity.com. Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kosik. We really appreciate this session. I would like to leave the floor open right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask it right now. Okay, I guess we do have a question. All right. The question is, how exactly does Menlo offer more protection against ransomware, credential theft, and phishing attacks than existing offerings in the market? Either Brett or John, maybe you would like to answer that.
Hi guys, Brett here from Menlo. Yeah, let me try and answer that. I guess the main thing really is that isolation is not trying to essentially figure out whether something is malicious or benign. The whole point of it is that all we do is essentially keep active content away from the user. We run a user's browsing session away from them within what we call a disposable virtual container. And we use that to move the execution point for any active content away from the user. By safeguarding the user's machine from receiving any active content, nothing can actually exploit any vulnerability in a browser or the applications used by the browser to run content. So because it's not trying to do detection, we don't suffer from things like false negatives or false positives. And really, it doesn't really matter what strain or type or family of malware we're talking about, because it's just keeping the active content, essentially like a bulletproof glass, away from the user. The user is completely protected.
And I'll just add to that. Hi everyone, it's John. And since we came out of stealth mode at the end of 2015, we're growing all the time. We're past 350 customers with over 4 million endpoints on the platform. Not one of those has been breached through our service. That gives us such confidence in the effectiveness of the platform that at the start of last year, we implemented the industry's only 100% malware protection guarantee, which is backed up by $1 million warranty, which no one else in the isolation space offers, and actually no one in the proxy space offers. It's only endpoint vendors that have ever done this, and that gives real confidence from a customer perspective.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. We have another question which says, are there any dependencies on OS or browsers that are supported by Menlo Security?
I'll take that one again, if you don't mind, John. And apologies as well. My having some camera issues here, so it's a little bit like a voice in the darkness. But no, the great thing with the way that the isolation platform works is we maintain a communication flow between the container that the user is connected to in their browser, and we do that using a proprietary piece of JavaScript, essentially. So the only thing which we do require is a modern browser that can effectively support JavaScript. So we work across a wide range of operating systems, devices, and browsers, all of the ones which corporates are essentially running. So, you know, your Internet Explorer's Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and also some mobile browsers as well now.
Right, perfect. I hope that answers the question. Are there any questions at this point of time? All right. Okay, well, if you have any other questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A section. We will relay it to the speakers and they will answer to you. And yes, thank you so much for Mr. Kaushik, John, and Brett. That was a very enlightening session. Thanks a lot. All right, moving on with the event, moving on with the next presentation. So what we have in the box next is our next presenter started his career as a security analyst in the year 2000, and in just 2 years he became InfoSec manager of Bank Boston, and in another 2 years he became chief security officer for Fidelity Investments. Later on, he worked for Gartner for almost 6 years as research director and VP research analyst. He's the current VP of Solutions for Securonics. Please welcome Mr. Augusto Barros. Over to you, Mr. Augusto.
All right, thank you. And sorry, it seems that my camera just decided to go completely kind of say rebel against me. But let's see if I can move to the other one. Wait, I don't think so, but okay, so let's go to the content and we're gonna find out about the camera soon. All right, so I believe everyone can see my slide, right?
Yes, we can, Augusto.
Perfect. And you're probably gonna see me by my side now because, as I said, my camera kind of was in front of me, just died. So kind of forgive me about the odd position that I'll be presenting here. All right, so we are here to talk a bit about how can improve our security operations center's effectiveness using behavior analytics and machine learning technology, right? Kind of Securonics kind of is a vendor in this space where we sell SIM that relies a lot on advanced analytics that uses machine learning and behavior analytics to do its job. And I want to spend a few minutes kind of trying to explain about how these technologies can help security operations centers. And when we talk about about SOCs, the first thing that I like to do is kind of present I would say a SOC in a nutshell, right? And how the SOC normally operates. There are many functions that we're going to see on a SOC that are maybe not related to threat detection and response. But most security operations centers today will focus or going to have their core processes around threat detection and response. And normally what we see there, or kind of the things that are more obvious, are the processes related to that piece on the top, right, on the slide, kind of monitoring and detection, people in front of screens, right, kind of looking for alerts, and then doing some basic triage on top of those. Normally, when they look at those alerts and they confirm that something is actually happening, they're going to move to a next process, right? So that alert will move to the next process, the incident response. As the SOCs evolved, we also noticed that incident response also became or kind of started to grow a parallel process that we call the threat hunting. That is essentially doing incident response without an alert first, right? So you assume there was a compromise, there is an hypothesis that something happened, and then you start the incident response process with the investigation, trying to confirm if that hypothesis is true. And then if that's indeed true, you go into the full incident response mode. Another process that exists within a SOC is the detection engineering, right? So when you have people looking on the screen and kind of waiting for alerts, you need to tell all your detection technologies about what they're going to find in order to generate an alert. And that is the job of detection engineering, kind of configuring and creating the content in our detection technology, so we will be able to generate those alerts that we want. Now, how do we know what we want to detect, right? And that's kind of where the last piece or the last process of a SOC will come in. That's the threat intelligence part, where we are learning about threats, and that learning, that process of learning about threats will feed all those other processes that we have within the SOC, right? It'll tell detection engineering about what's going on out there, so they can actually build the content to detect the same activity in your environment. They will provide context to people that are doing the monitoring and detection, so that when they see an alert, they can relate to things that haven't seen before. And also for incident response, kind of they can provide a lot of indicators and also context. So when you find something in your environment, it's not something completely new that you need to completely figure out what it is, but you can relate to some threat that has been seen before. Say, okay, we know what it is. We know all the other pieces of this campaign, so it's easier to extract and contain all those pieces of that threat from your environment. Now, those processes kind of have to operate kind of in harmony for the SOC to operate kind of properly. The problem here is we started seeing a lot of, let's say, overload of activities related to the adoption of cloud technologies, and also a very sharp increase in threat activity. Because if you look kind of from 10 years ago to now, the amount of threat activity that we have in our hands is not only the typical, we'll say, malware, the commodity malware type of thing, but we have, let's say, kind of cybercrime groups, right? Kind of powerful cybercrime groups, motivated, funded. You have nation states, right? Kind of full nation states operating on a cyber espionage or the cyber war front sometimes, right? And when I talk about cloud technology, it essentially means that the volume of data or telemetry coming from our environments, when you adopt kind of the cloud technologies, when you have dynamic environments, you're spinning up workloads dynamically in the cloud, you're moving from individual systems to containers. Now you have dozens of containers instead of a single server. Now, with all that, there is a kind of huge volume in terms of kind of data that you need to monitor and what you need to find in that data, the threats. So the result of that kind of combination essentially is the overload of alerts. I'll say if today there is a problem for a security operations center, is the alert overload. They just have too many alerts to deal with. And when you have the problem in your hands, the first thing that kind of most organizations will try to do is essentially, right, they're going to look, say, okay, how I solve this? And the easy solution or the easy way to look at this problem is to throw people at it, right? So, well, I have 5 analysts kind of doing the triage of my alerts. The number of alerts is increasing. So now I'm going to put 2 or 3 more bodies to my group, right, to see if I can handle that. The problem here is that it doesn't scale. The SOC manager, the director, and whoever owns that group, there will be one day, no matter how security is becoming kind of something that is more upfront in the minds of executives, kind of more how much of the headlines we are capturing with security incidents, there will be a point where people that are the owners of the SOC, right, or those that are kind of responsible for operating the SOC, they'll go say, I need more bodies. And the business will say, no, sorry, I can't. So the other alternative that they have is to improve their efficiency, right? Kind of make whoever they have in their hands, or the size of the group, operate in a way that they're going to be more effective. And for security operations to do that, you can do that in 2 ways. One is you can improve your alerting capabilities. You can apply some type of filtering or improve the efficiency of your detection technology. So you're going to generate less alerts. You're going to have a very low false positive rate So now you have less alerts being generated. And the other way that you can improve it is by accelerating how you deal with each individual alert, right? So if you can triage alerts kind of in a faster manner, you can improve your throughput without necessarily increasing the number of people, right? And even if you're getting kind of more alerts, as you are kind of solving each one of those faster, you actually kind of maintaining the balance in terms of the activity that you have to operate. And when organizations are looking into these challenges, that's where normally they're going to start looking into things like AI, right? The artificial intelligence. I know some people already kind of mentioned that today, and probably kind of in a not kind of so positive manner. And I agree with them because there's a lot of hype here. And if we take out the hype from the AI thing, we're essentially looking at two techniques from the AI field of research. We're essentially looking at machine learning and two types of machine learning: supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning. Supervised machine learning is that one where you teach the algorithm something, but you normally have kind of trained data, you have labeled data, where you have, okay, I have a bunch of pictures here of cats, I have a bunch of pictures here of dogs, I feed those pictures to the algorithm, and then I can come with a fresh set of pictures and show the picture to the algorithm, say, is this a cat or a dog? And then based on kind of what it learned from kind of, it will tell me if that picture is a cat or a dog. We've been doing this in security for years, right? If you think about our anti-spam systems, they're essentially operating with this type of technology for more than a decade, right? Probably 2 decades, we've already been doing some type of machine learning-based anti-spam filtering. We are also doing that now very efficiently with anti-malware, right? There's a lot of malware detection systems that are going to use supervised machine learning. Now, when you look at unsupervised machine learning, normally the use of it is different. You're usually not trying to use it to automatically detect the bad, but we use a lot of unsupervised machine learning to understand how our organization and our technology environment behaves, so we can start finding the anomalies, or those cases that are out of the ordinary and that require more investigation. And normally when we expand all these say machine learning techniques, we're going to find some very specific sub cases, right, or sub techniques that will be used to say to power, right, or to enable threat detection capabilities, right? So you can look, for example, in terms of algorithmically generated domains, right? There are malwares that are looking for a way to go to a command and control system. They cannot have just a single name, right? But oh, my boss.com, right? That is where I gotta get my commands, because the first person that finds the malware will block that domain and all that malware is gone, right? That botnet will not operate anymore. So what the malware does is generates domains in a pseudo-random manner, right? So the same way that you have a secure ID or one of those authenticators in your Google app, right, where it generates kind of numbers, it's a pseudo-random algorithm. You have the same thing for command and control for malware. So the owner or the designer of the malware know where the malware is going to go to get their commands. The interesting thing here is that those algorithms are predictable in a way that the names of the domains that you generate, you may not know what they're going to be the next one, but you know what they look like. And by knowing what they look like, you can detect, right? When you see all the name resolutions for your environment, you can start looking and say, wait, these names here, they look that they were dynamically generated. So without a signature that was normally required for that type of detection, now using unsupervised or supervised machine learning, you can find those cases that were very hard to do with single and simple rules. Why does that matter from improving the effectiveness of kind of our alert generation? It means that now, because we do not need to use the rules, the false positive rate would be far lower, right? We used to try to use rules. They were just kind of simple signatures for things that are very hard to determine, right? So for example, if I want to find people that are logging in with a different behavior, they're coming from a different place at a different hour, they're using a different system, right, a different device, all those things you could try to do with rules, but the problem is that the system will not dynamically learn what people are doing in terms of which devices they use and what time, coming from where. And when you try to do that with rules, the amount of false positives that you generate is just huge, right? So kind of by applying machine learning for those specific cases, and here is something very important, you're going to apply machine learning where you can actually improve what you're doing before, right? And there are many cases for that, but there are certain things that you can do very well with rules, and it doesn't make sense to try to use machine learning for those. Right? So for example, when you look into matching certain network traffic with indicators of compromise that you got from threat intelligence, why would you use machine learning for that? There's no point. A simple signature, a simple rule match, but will work, and will work very well for that specific use case. Now, for many others, like identifying robotic behavior, okay, there is a user account that now is starting to show behavior that looks like a machine. So there may be a malware operating kind of in kind of that stole that account. That's the kind of thing that machine learning can be very useful. Now, the next step where you're going to really hit and kind of really get kind of a order of magnitude of improvement kind of for your operations, security operations center, is where you start stitching those things together. That's kind of where we normally kind of talk about the behavior analytics. And this is where you start looking at all those small items that in the past will generate a single alert that you have to investigate and spend time on them. But you start monitoring them and adding scores of how unusual they are and start building the attack chain, right? Okay, this thing that I'm seeing here looks like a recon activity, right? Kind of John gets a phishing email. Now he clicks on it, right? And it's directed to a malicious site, right? So there is a domain generated algorithm, for example, or it was just kind of just a simple intelligence match. But I can start combining those things. And then there's the beaconing pattern that I mentioned before, right? So you identify that beaconing pattern by using a machine learning algorithm. And then that compromised system starts to access files in a way that generates a spike in the normal activity of that user. Here's the unsupervised machine learning being applied as well. And when all those things are stick together, right, and not necessarily by a rule, by saying, well, I'm seeing a lot of anomalies that are interesting over a certain period of time, then you're going to generate one alert. And that one alert has a lot of context attached to it. It's not John gets a phishing email that you're going to have to investigate. There will be lots of false positives, but it's John was phished. He started running, he downloaded malware. The malware started to operate, and then he also started to gather data in something that looks like an attempt to steal intellectual property. So your alert now is just one for a lot of activities that you normally generate individual alerts in the past, but also it's something that has so much more context that you're going to speed up your investigation and decision-making process for what to do with that alert. So that's, as a way in how you can improve the efficiency of your security operations center, applying these techniques as behavior analytics and machine learning. I'm sorry for the very dense explanation here, but we are doing kind of a very short session. I just want to thank you all for listening to me in this very odd alignment of my camera. And we'll see if we have any questions here to answer. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Augusto. We will leave the floor open for at least 10 to 20 seconds because there is a slight delay when attendees are seeing the session. So if anyone has any question, please feel free to ask it. Some of you, if you are having issues in asking the question, there is a question mark or a chat sign on your GoToWebinar application or browser plugin. Please feel free to click on that and we'll be able to see your questions. Thank you. All right, Augusto, we have our first question, which is, what is the best way to add analytics and ML to a SOC?
Right. Well, there are many ways of doing that, right? As I mentioned, you have different technologies that you do that, like the antivirus, kind of the anti-spam, right, or anti-phishing. When you get those technologies, you're getting already some of machine learning, some of the advanced analytics kind of are part of it. When you look at a kind of threat detection kind of from a higher level, it's normally by bringing technology that will operate usually on top of a traditional SIM, or by kind of using a SIM that has those analytics capabilities. Using an example like Securonics technology, but most of the leaders, I'll say today in this market, also have machine learning and advanced analytics capabilities. One important thing to do here is you just do not go there and you enable all the analytics and machine learning that exists on the technology, but you do that based on the use cases you have. So if you're trying, for example, to find account compromise, so you're trying to find people that are using accounts that were compromised, you're going to go there and enable the machine learning based use cases for that activity. The fact that you have use cases that use machine learning doesn't mean that they have to be enabled. They are better than whatever you're doing. So I say, do a use case driven approach. Check first what you want to detect, and then check if the machine learning approach is the best one for that case. If it is, you go there and you enable if your tool supports that. Eventually, you may find that you're looking for certain things that kind of machine learning would help, and your tools that you have today cannot help. That's the point when you start shopping around for products to expand what you do. And one last thing I would say is, it is possible to build your machine learning capabilities, right? You can buy advanced analytics tools and start kind of building kind of models and so on. But most organizations that try to do that, they are not happy with the results. They spend a lot of money, a lot of time, and usually kind of it's very hard for them to maintain and expand those things. So it may sound suspicious coming from a vendor to say, well, it's better for you to buy an off-the-shelf product, but that was something that kind of my early research from Gartner was already something that was saying that, right? Kind of, unless you are really kind of a Fortune 10 and you have a dedicated kind of, let's say, data science group that may be available for the security group to work in that type of activity, the best thing you do is go with the off-the-shelf product for that.
All right, perfect. We have one more question, which is a little bit bold and a little controversial as well. So I would love for you to clarify that. So the question is, some people are saying sooner SIM will die as most of the solutions have SOAR and analytics. How would you like to address that, Augusto?
Right. Well, the SIM today, right? When you talk about SIM, many people may think about certain technologies that were built almost 20 years ago, right? And SIMs are like cars, right? When I say there is a car here, you may think about a Ford T from the early kind of 20th century, or you may be talking about a Tesla with an kind of electric engine, right? So is SIM dying? Well, if that's old SIM, right, kind of from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, yes, that technology is obsolete, but the SIM has evolved, right? When you look today at the more modern SIMs, there's almost nothing there that kind of from inside, when you look at the tool, that is compared to what was done before. We're still collecting logs, collecting events, and then deciding what to do with them. That's essentially what the SIM does. But in the past, you see relational database, right, in the back end of the SIM. No good SIM today uses a relational database. We're using big data technologies. You're using Hadoop components, Spark, Kafka to transfer huge volumes of data. So is the SIM going to die? No, I don't see it. SIM has incorporated the UBA technologies that started as a standalone market a few years ago. So now the SIM is smarter, right? Because the SIM has these analytics techniques that I'm mentioning here. We're also seeing the same thing with SOAR. SIM is incorporating the response and the automation capabilities as well. There are many SIM products that either have a module or they are developing the automation capabilities that will make them go beyond just generating an alert. They can enrich dynamically, they can trigger containment actions, response actions, and so on. So there's really, I would say, there's no point of saying the SIM is dying. SIM is evolving. If you look at the SIMs that existed 5, 10, 15 years ago, those are dying or are already dead. But kind of the SIM concept of collecting data from multiple sources and then applying analytics and then moving from there, that's evolving. I think kind of most modern SIMs today are doing pretty well now.
All right, perfect. Very well explained, Augusto. I would like to ask one more time if there are any more questions. If not, then we'll go ahead and proceed with our next session. All right, Augusto, I guess that's pretty much it from the question answer side. Thank you so much for joining in, and it was a great session as usual. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So we are moving on to the third presentation of today's event. So let's see what we have next. So our next presenter actually holds a PhD from Southern Methodist University. He has co-authored more than 19 papers and books on applications of machine learning in cybersecurity. He was a security researcher in WebSense and a distinguished scientist in PayPal. He's the founder and CEO of Seclectics. Please welcome Mr. Syed Abu Neme. Over to you, Mr. Syed.
Thank you, Hardeep. Thank you, everyone, and good to be here. Let me share my screen. Hopefully, you guys can see my slides.
Yes, we can. We can. Maybe you can put it in the slideshow mode.
Yes. Excellent.
All
so
right, perfect.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for the introduction, Hardeep. Good to be here today. So today we will talk about predictive threat intelligence. I know that Gusto mentioned that there is lots of hype around machine learning and supervised learning models and unsupervised learning models in cybersecurity. But today we will talk about a real application of these two techniques to solve a real problem that we have in the cyber threat intel space. So when you tell someone about predictive threat intel, usually they're like, this sounds like you're making something up. It's too good to be true. And people think about it in a way that is absolutely not the right way to think about predictive threat intel. When you mention predictive threat intel to people, they think that you will be aggregating threat intelligence from different sources, then you will curate that threat intel, curate these IOCs, normalize them, and come up with a score to tell them what's important. This is actually not predictive threat intelligence. What you are doing here simply is that you are aggregating threat intel to infer if certain IOCs are important to you. This is everything but predictive. You are just taking existing knowledge about indicators of compromise, and then you are making certain assumptions or taking data inputs to come up with a conclusion if this IOC is important to you or not. Predictive threat intelligence is about being offensive. It's about knowing about attacks before they hit your parameter. It's about being proactive in your blocking with high confidence and low false positive rate. When you talk about predictive threat intelligence, you should be able to hopefully find out where cyber criminals are building up infrastructure before they even launch attacks from that infrastructure. So this will enable, if you do this, this will enable your SOC to be more offensive instead of always playing catch up with cyber attacks. And as the previous presenter mentioned, one of the main problems that the security operations centers suffer from is alert fatigue or alert overload. Basically, they have lots of incidents to work on a daily basis, and they do not have enough resources, enough hours in the day to sift through all of the incidents and alerts that they have to go through to find what's important to their organization. So hopefully, if you build a good and right predictive threat intel practice in-house, you will be able to help your SOC become more offensive, become more proactive instead of always playing catch up. So at Seclytics, we built a technology that assists security operations centers with that. The technology that we built doesn't mainly rely on aggregating threat intel from different sources, doesn't mainly rely on listening into chatter in dark deep web forums or sitting in the underground to find out what's going to happen. However, we took this to the next level where we look at the internet daily, find where cyber criminals are setting up infrastructure by looking at changes in the IPv4, IPv6 space, changes in the domain name registrations, changes in BGP announcements, and then based on all of that data that we look at, find where cyber criminals are setting up infrastructure today. So if you go to that infrastructure that they are setting up today, scan it and try to crawl it, you will not find any malicious content. But in a matter of weeks or months or what have you, you will start seeing malicious content hosted there. So we built a technology that looks for certain behaviors online that I will explain in the next slide. These behaviors basically are distinct, and you can discriminate these behaviors from a behavior of a legitimate organization. A legitimate organization will acquire servers all the time, register domain names all the time, announce BGP prefixes all the time, and these patterns for legitimate organizations will be very different from patterns that we see in cyber criminal activity. So we did an experiment in 2017 with a real Fortune 500 company where we gave them access to lots of profiles that we built for these cyber criminal groups based on the behaviors that I mentioned. And we found that during a 12-month evaluation, we were able to predict attacks successfully 51 days in advance with 97% accuracy and the false positive rate that was less than 0.01%. The way the predictions work is simply, as I mentioned, by building a picture of all the changes that are happening on the internet on a daily basis. So we look at changes in the IPv4, IPv6 space, changes in BGP announcements, changes in DNS resolutions, changes in domain name registrations, and then we leverage an unsupervised learning step where we look at all the changes that happen, separate these patterns into different regions or clusters or segments to discriminate the behavior of good actors versus bad actors. And then we leverage supervised learning models to label these clusters that we created to find out what's the probability of these clusters being malicious and find out what type of malicious activity or predict what type of malicious activity these clusters will be involved in. So after we do this and we generate the predictions, this is where the confusion usually happens. We aggregate threat intel from different sources to verify these predictions. So the goal of the aggregation of threat intel and IOCs are mainly to verify the predictions, but we don't use these IOCs to come up with the predictions or generate these predictions. And this is what most of the people don't do right when it comes to predictive intelligence. So let me show you one example from our platform. And this will be very relevant given the latest events that happened with the SolarWinds. So the SolarWinds breach happened in December, or was made public in December, and FireEye and multiple other security companies shared intelligence about the IOCs that were used by the Sunburst malware, specifically for C2 communication. Two of these IOCs were the 5.252.177.21 and the 25 IP. So if you look at the calendar view here, you will see that there is a black square in April, specifically on April 1st, and this shows the prediction date by our platform. And then you will see that in December, specifically on the 14th, we started receiving reports from other security companies about these IOCs being reported to be malicious. So what happened in April was that we saw multiple acquisitions of different /24s. These /24s are large in range, so the potential of false positives is extremely high. However, we haven't received any single false positive from any of these ranges since April from any users of the platform or any sources that we have externally. We saw the acquisitions, we saw the BGP announcements that we haven't seen before, from autonomous system numbers that we haven't seen before. Then we saw domain name registrations that had A records pointing to IPs in these ranges. Based on that, we are able to conclude that this profile that contains all of these /24 ranges is potentially malicious, and they will be used in malware categories. So the clustering part was basically to cluster all of these ranges, and then the classification part was to label that cluster. Now, we started receiving confirmation from external sources that these ranges are malicious. Some of them have been used in spam, some of them have been used in phishing, and some of them have been used in hosting malware-related infrastructure. And as you can see from the graph, from the figure here or the dashboard, most of these ranges have been confirmed to be malicious. When we when we did threat actor attribution, we found that there are multiple APT groups that are associated with these ranges, like APTTA544, UNC2452, APT33, and multiple other threat actors or threat groups. So this gives us high confidence that this infrastructure is mainly used by cyber criminal groups, and we could confidently block access to all of these ranges. And this is indeed what we did in April, where we blocked access to all of these ranges by integrating our intelligence with other security controls to follow our customers. We have integrations with firewalls, EDR, web proxies, email gateways, so integrations that will enable the customer to take proactive steps by blocking these attacks. And this is how we currently deploy our product, by integrating into the customer's SIM, send all of these profiles to their SIM through API calls, doing the integration in their SIM by correlating the profiles with with logs from their different security controls, and then we push blocking rules to all of these security controls to proactively block access to these profiles. We build multiple integrations with different products. Usually, even if we don't support any products today, we can build these integrations easily, and that can be done through RESTful API integrations without any problems. So to conclude, to do predictive threat intel right, you need to focus on being proactive instead of just aggregating and inferring information from existing attacks. You need to build a capability that will enable your SOC to be more proactive by helping them block attacks in advance or attack infrastructure in advance before even attacks are launched from that infrastructure. This concludes the presentation. If you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sayed. It was a great, crisp and clear session, and I hope everyone learned a lot about predictive threat intelligence. We will leave the floor open again for 15-20 seconds. If anyone has any question, please feel free to ask us. Thank you. All right, Said, we have our first questions, which says, how are threat actor profiles associated with APT groups?
Excellent. So similar to the example I showed here, when we build profiles for these threat actors, we focus on the infrastructure that these threat actors leverage in launching the attack. So when we first come up with a prediction, we don't know if that infrastructure belongs to APT 28, APT 33, or any of the existing threat actor groups. We know that the patterns behind the buildup of that infrastructure look suspicious. We, based on previous knowledge, can tell if or can predict if that infrastructure will be used in malware-related campaigns, phishing, C2, ransomware, or what have you. So we have certain confidence about the type of malware activity or malicious activity that will be hosted on that infrastructure. However, we do not know which APT groups are behind that infrastructure until we start seeing IOCs that are associated with that infrastructure. So similar to the example here, we built the threat actor profile. We had a random name for it. Here we called it profile 126597, but we were not able to attribute TA 505 or UNC 24 or APT 33 until we started receiving intel about cyber criminals leveraging that infrastructure. So this is the relationship between the profiles and the APT groups.
All right, perfect. We have one more question, Said. It's a long one. Please bear with me. When you come up with predictions, do you aggregate information from third-party threat intel feeds and predict if an IOC is going to be malicious based on that aggregation?
Oh, excellent question. So the short answer is no. And I will give an example here. So when we come up with predictions, as we mentioned, if you think about predictions as aggregating threat intel from different sources to come up with the predictions, then you are doing predictive intel wrong. Here is a good example. This IOC, this IP, was never reported before. If you look at the calendar view here, even in 2019, 18, until April 1st, we haven't seen any reports about this IOC specifically being reported to be malicious. We made the prediction on April 1st. If we relied on previous threat intel, then we couldn't have come up to the conclusion that this IOC is malicious, is going to be bad. But leveraging patterns about how the BGP prefix was announced, how it was acquired, which domain names were registered and resolved to IPs on that range, helped us come up to the conclusion that this IP is going to be used in malware-related campaigns. So the answer, to answer the question, do you rely on previous intel from third-party sources to come up with the predictions? The answer is no. The right way to do it is to rely on patterns that will tell us if that infrastructure was built in a legitimate way or in a suspicious way. If it's suspicious, then we can predict that it's malicious. And this is how we were able to come up with that prediction specifically. If you can tell from the graph or the calendar view here, most of the threat intel aggregation happened after the fact, after the prediction was made, and it was only, and the aggregation happened was only to verify the prediction, not to come up with the prediction. So excellent question.
All right, great, great. Thank you so much, Saeed. We'll just wait for maybe 4 to 5 seconds more if anyone has any other question. All right, Saeed. Thank you so much. For now, we don't have any other questions in the question and answer section. So thank you so much for joining in, and we really appreciate it. It was a great session as usual. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will go ahead with our next presenter. He has already switched on his camera, very excited. I'll just quickly introduce him as well. So our next presenter started his career as a software developer. After working for a few years in software development, he became founder and CEO of Vanadium, and he's the current VP of Threat Prevention and Intelligence of Checkpoint. Please welcome Mr. Neetson Ziv. Over to you, Mr. Neetson.
So, hi guys, pleasure to be here and thank you for hosting me. What I wanted to talk to you guys today is about the generation of cyber attacks. And here I can share my screen. Hopefully it will be okay. Let me just try and do this right now. Okay, can you see my screen yet or not yet? Not yet. Okay, let me try again. Okay, now can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can, Neetson. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So what I want to talk to you about today is the 5th generation of cyber attacks. And the way I want to do this is simply by explaining what is going on right now in the cybersecurity world that is right now. So I want to take us back to 2017. So 2017 sounds like a long time ago in the history. And at that point, there was a wake-up call. We had WannaCry, we had special weapons from the NSA leaking out, we had attacks that are similar to what we had right now in the Sunburst case, such as NotPetya, where somebody actually attacked an infrastructure of finance in the Ukraine. And we actually had a lot of things that we had over the past year, we already had them in 2017. So in 2018, the World Economic Forum already recognized cyber attacks as one of the 5 most critical risks to humanity. So at that point, you would say, okay, something must change. But we understand that what happened since is that we right now are tracking more than 500 active cyber groups at any given moment. Over 90% of them are what we call low volume, high impact. They do not broadcast everything on the internet. They are actually very focused on specific targets or specific campaigns. And if you look right here, you can see that the mass volume is coming from less than 5% of the cyber groups that are active out there. So when we actually look on what are the attacks themselves, you can find them on the endpoint, on the mobile, on IoT devices, on cloud infrastructure. And I want to bring some highlights on the things that we've seen over the past year. What we've seen on mobile devices, for example, is that you had many ransomwares, such as Black Rose Lucy, that is now spreading around through applications. We had vulnerabilities that impact over 40% of the world's mobile devices that can actually root your device easily and remotely. There are ways that in application, you can find critical vulnerabilities. For example, in Instagram application, there was a very easy way to send you a link that can get to remote code execution. In the App Store or the Play Store, we find applications that are using malicious or sometimes vulnerable SDK, software development kits, that even when are reported, it takes them months to actually get to the point that those holes are being blocked. We also understand that 90% of the attacks right now are starting from malicious emails. If you're looking on the big things over the past year or two, you can actually see, for example, BEC, that stands for Business Email Compromise Scam, cost media giant Nike $29 million. And you can see more and more of those scams actually being used both in the high-end, mid-end, sometimes in the small, medium businesses, and a lot in the consumer business as well. So the attack volume are very, very diverse in their attack. So now let's recap the history of cybersecurity for a second. So we had a few generations. We are right now in the 5th generation of cyber attacks. It started from the old viruses, it went to network attacks, application attacks, payload, and now a multi-vector attack. So let's see them in details. So the first step that we had was somewhere in the late 1980s. At that time, we had standalone attacks. The machines, if some of you remembers, the PCs were not connected to each other. You had to move information using floppy disks. It was way, way before the USB devices. And then initial viruses were created, and in result, the antivirus was created. In the second generation, it was in the mid-90s, we started connecting everything to the internet. Everything was one big network. At the time, it wasn't that big, but we started seeing people actually exploiting remote networks. So at that time, the firewall was invented to actually segregate between networks. At that point, we started seeing exploitation of vulnerabilities within applications. So applications were written in a very, very naive way. Nobody thought about security at that point. And there were very, very simple ways to simply send the wrong packet to the right machine and get access to databases, worldwide servers, and many more. To counter that, IPS was invented, the intrusion prevention system. So every packet that went into the organization started having scans on traffic coming in. So once this was solved, we started having polymorphic content. It means viruses that do not have signatures anymore, documents that are containing malicious content and exploitation, sometimes scripts. And at that point, there was no easy way to detect it, and the world actually moved to sandboxing and anti-bot technologies, and many more things that are machine learning based, that know how to take one concept of an attack and find if you've got variants or changes or exploitation, or even creating a baseline of what is right and wrong, such as in sandbox case, and ensure that nothing that is varying from the original case or the straightforward case can pass into the organization. So what happened right now? So when we sample our customers and we are trying to create a survey on what is your current security level, what applications are you using right now to protect yourself, you can find that the world average is somewhere around 2.8. If generation number 1 is just antivirus, generation 2 is network, we see that many still do not have protection such as IPS and sandboxing, not to talk about the advanced things that are going on right now in the industry. So when we're looking on the 5th generation of attacks, we see that it started a few years back. We see them in large scale, usually across country and industry. We see them as multi-vector. They might start from the network, go to the cloud, have mobile endpoint, go to SaaS services, and basically are not limited to one attack vector that they started with. It is usually with state-sponsored technologies, and I would say that it also includes people that are working on those technologies and operate them. As you can see in the previous slides, we've mentioned that there are over 500 active cybersecurity groups. Each one of them, they're not just developing the malware, they are creating the full ecosystem right now. What it actually means is that they are operating, once they are attacking a target, they're looking to do second stage, third stage, lateral movement, and they're not limiting themselves to broadcasts of one single malware. So as technologies evolve, as exploitation evolves, these guys are actually taking those technologies and embedding them in their own attacks. So why can't we simply protect against those attacks? So this seems like the right model. You take some cloud security, endpoint security, network perimeter, mobile, data center. You might have different technologies that you would say the best, and you try to combine them. What actually happens at that stage is that you've got a bunch of technologies that you need to incorporate in. Some of those solutions contain those technologies, some you need to augment with additional solution. And basically you start having just a huge amount of technologies that you want to incorporate to your solution. So originally you thought that you're going to take 5 different products, and there you go, you've got your own cybersecurity solution. You right now understand that there are so many technologies that are not covered by those 5 technologies. And this vision of having a security built from those technologies start to break down. You see all the holes. You constantly need to upgrade those solutions or products, and you somehow need to tie them in together. So you would say, okay, it sounds like an easy task to do. So this is a recent survey, not recent, but an older survey that is actually showing the amount of companies that you had in each one of the industries. Today's slide will be more complicated in that sense, but you would see here that the amount of companies that are generating the technologies in each one of the attack vectors is quite huge. So you've got a huge variety of companies to actually select from, and once you select from, you get to this situation. Now you need to build your own solution from the components and products that you've done, and as mentioned in previous lectures, you need to tie them into one solution and not have them operating as separate products, not collaborating with each other. So this vision of having one consolidated technology with real-time threat prevention, with all the products in it, is now becoming very hard to implement when you're thinking about how do I make this a reality from different products that you need to combine your own to a single, I would say, security architecture, leverage all your ability and can protect you from wherever you go. So when we go to find out those questions, we need to ask yourself, what is actually hitting our attack vector? And in order to do that, I want to use the MITRE attack vector framework to actually explain this. So I'm going to take just one of those cases. And what you're going to see when I zoom into one of those techniques is that there are over 200 different techniques. Each one of them have sub-techniques, in this case, 8 sub-techniques. In total, there are 1,000 sub-techniques. And for each one of them, there are hundreds of documents, cases, explanation, expansions, and many more. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of examples. Some of them, by the way, already include code or snippet code within GitHub that can actually show you very easily how to take those ideas and implement them inside your own malware or operation. For the bad guys, this is a huge playground with a daily new ideas on how to do this. So for us as Checkpoint, one of the things that we spend a lot of time is actually thinking about how do we protect from those kinds of attacks and threats as they evolve. And we are constantly focused on insights and research, gaining what is in the market, what are the attacks, reversing every malware that we see out there, any operation that we see out there, extracting from it what are the prevention technologies that we see out there, actually mapping them, creating more and more technologies, creating from them the products. And over the past year, our focus mainly changed towards not just providing products, but providing what we call an evergreen solution that is constantly renewable, that you don't need to upgrade, that can provide you a single place to see all the incident, share intelligence, prevent those attacks, whether it's network, endpoint, mobile, cloud. And of course, find a way to have a third-party open garden strategy with an API first. It allows everybody to build on top of this infrastructure and extend to it. So when I'm trying to wrap the generation 5 of attacks, we see them more sophisticated, challenging the current products on their boundaries, on the fact that you're not just limited to one silo anymore, that the attack can start from your endpoint and move to the cloud using the Office 365 credential. It might start from identity and then go to SaaS services. And the solutions of the future do not need to be one product to protect one attack vector, but a solution that somebody can implement with ease and without the need of an army of analysts and engineers to get to the point that they can protect their users, assets, data, cloud infrastructure going forward. So guys, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this introduction to Generation 5 of attacks.
Thank you so much, Nitsan. As usual, the session was very helpful and informative. Again, we will leave the floor open for 20 seconds just for any questions. Please feel free to ask any questions, any attendees if you have. All right, I guess we have a question. Let me read it. Oh, well, it's not a question. Someone just wants to appreciate you. Great session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, great. Okay, we have another question. Okay, which is, it says, are Gen 5 attacks possible on mobile devices as well?
So the answer is simply yes. We see a lot of them inactive. I'll give two examples. One of them was used to bypass two-factor authentication just recently. It's a publication that we released under research.checkpoint.com. In that case, they installed an application that actually gets the SMS that you get for two-factor authentication. And then when the user is actually logging in, they grab this and grab the application and log in themselves. So this bypass was used for banking. They use it for corporate credentials. They've used it to access Salesforce and drain all the account and active opportunities from that Salesforce. So we see that quite a lot right now.
All right, perfect. Thank you. We have another question which says, what is your viewpoint on consolidating security solutions from one vendor as to putting all your eggs in one basket?
So I think it's a great question. We have many internal debates on this question. I think that the answer is basically you need to weigh in your ability to get the value that you want from a vendor. So if I would have been in this decision, I would say two major constraints. One is headcount. I think that one of the most common remark that we get from our customers is that bottom line, to operate the security operation of the organization, it costs a lot. The people are getting more and more expensive on a yearly basis. Recruiting them is harder. The more systems that you've got inside the organization, the ramping up takes longer. And the ability to retain them over a long time is not that great. So let's say that you get 5 different systems and you got the best security one after one. Maintaining this solution is extremely expensive. Upgrading, renewals, more setups, more configuration. You need to do that step by step. You need to open rules. You need to constantly change things. So the effectiveness of such a solution goes down drastically. The amount of customers that we've seen that mastered this is very, very close to zero. It's simply impossible to do that with the current pace. So I think that there is no way to walk around saying you need to consolidate the base, the things that are already been in the market for years, and sometimes use new vendors for the places that are completely unique and you need a specific advantage in them until they get consolidated into a single solution. I don't think that the world of cybersecurity can hold in the current posture of new cyber threats coming in the hundreds per day. Raises in headcount are kind of blocked. The headcount costs increases, product costs increases, and still have an efficient security over time.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Nitin. I guess we can take one more question, which is, what are your views on XDR?
Okay. So XDR, I think, is one of the greatest ways to actually implement what we've just talked about in the second question. The only issue I've got with XDR is that nobody actually understands what is the definition of XDR. And if you look on the current implementations of the market, each vendor implemented a different concept of XDR. So there are the guys that started from the endpoint and had the EDR extending to XDR. There are the guys that started with SOAR and now moving to XDR. There are the guys that started with the SIEM and now are adding XDR and SOAR. So there are different implementations for this, but I think that the direction of how do we actually create a solution from the product is the right way for the market to evolve into. And this is one of the things that we've been working on, and I think 10 more companies in the industry are working on right now, to actually find a way to take information from different products and correlate them, so you won't have different products each reporting on different incident, but having a single place that all the products are actually reporting into. Some might ask, how is it different from the SIEM vendors and SOAR vendors? And I think part of the information is that the way it is operated. The data itself is sometimes available, but building from it the solution might be difficult for many. And you actually see that many do not implement this. Even though they've got access to some of the data, it's extremely hard for somebody to build these insights. And one of the challenges of XDR is actually for the vendor that create the XDR and create a lot of the components to build the logics and provide them as part of the product themselves, and not just provide the platform for somebody else to configure and do this.
All right, very well put, Nitin. Thank you so much. And I guess we don't have any more questions at this point of time. Thanks a lot, Nitin, for joining us, and it was a wonderful session as usual. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we have, that was our last presentation for today, but upcoming we have our panel discussion. I just wanted to remind you, I hope you all listened to all the presentations very carefully, because after the panel discussion, the quiz section is coming up, and you know, there are $500 US on the line, so I hope each one of you actually paid attention to all the presentations. All right, moving on, we have a panel discussion with some of the renowned CISOs and managing directors of Middle East, and I would like to invite Mr. Sarfaraz Qazi again, who will be moderating this session. Over to you, Sarfaraz.
Thanks, Hardeep. I think so before I start, may I kindly request, I see Sagir and Samir. Ahmed, if you can switch on your video, if possible. So people ask me, working 10 years in cybersecurity in the Middle East, one of the biggest thing I personally look back at, like if there was one of the biggest takeaway, and there were a lot, was being fortunate enough to reach out to some amazing people. I mean, I've seen technologies change, I've seen organizations change, but the biggest takeaway for me was know some of wonderful people who are literally, if I would say, Superman in their own right, the kind of jobs they do, and personally getting to know them, it has been a privilege. So when I was said that we need to have panel, from the top of my head, 3 people I could think of, some of the best brains I have personally worked with, and I was fortunate enough to know I could leverage and pick up the phone and call them. And so here are we with Ahmed Hassan Al-Lawati. Ahmed is a proven and qualified professional in information security, and I know Ahmed for over 7 years now. He has worked in different segments like ISMS, IT security governance, security operation. I think I could fill up the entire 15 minutes talking about what all he has done, but Currently, he's responsible for managing and maintaining corporate information security at Redo. It has not, and I know, it's not easy being Ahmed, maintaining telco for one of the biggest service providers in the region. I also am fortunate enough to call upon Samir Sheikh, a great friend of mine, and for the uninitiated, Samir was, he has been taking multiple roles across multiple sectors. Currently he's managing director of the leading encryption companies, looking after the Middle East African operations. But he was in the hot seat. He was the CISO of one of the top 3 airlines, if not the biggest airline in the world. And he has overseen making cybersecurity predictive. And think about it, every time your plane flies and it was safe, it's large was attributed to him and the team, the work they did. And last but not least, I would affectionately call out to Sagir Ahmed Khan. Very fortunate to know him. Amazing human, personally. He runs security operations for a Fortune 100 company, and trust me, if anybody has seen nation states, I'm pretty sure all the 3 gentlemen see it on a daily basis or have been seeing on. But Sagir has been there, done that, and successfully defended, create one of the best security infrastructures, running previously for a bank and now for a Fortune 100 company. So welcome, gentlemen. It's a privilege, absolute privilege to have you on board. And just wanted to give a quick minute before I delve in with the questions, if you want to say anything to our audience here.
Thank you, Sarfraz.
Yes.
Thanks, Sarfraz. Thank you, Sarfraz, and good afternoon to everyone.
Right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, this is Samir.
Hi, this is Sagir Ahmed. This is very comprehensive introduction by Sarfraz, and thank you so much for this. And nice to see you, everyone here.
Awesome. So let's delve in. I think so. One of the common factors with joins 3 of all 3 of you is the nature of the job you have been, right? And so there's one thing which does not exist, which is a normal, right? So I think so. I want to start with, and this is a question for all 3 of you, and I'll probably start with Ahmed. Does the word normal even exist, in your life? And if it does, what does it actually mean?
Thank you, Sarfraz. I think that's a very interesting question, to be honest. And in order for me to share my perspective over it, let's recap what happened a year back. I mean, we heard about COVID-19, and what COVID-19 has taught us is that a normal can quickly change to abnormal in seconds. And I think as humans, we evolve and we adapt to things. And our answer to COVID was that, well, it's abnormal, but we're changing it to the new normal now. Now, no matter what industry we come from, whether it's banking, financial, or telecommunication, we were all hit big time. And we all had to make really scary decisions, to be honest, as this pandemic hit us. So recapping, going a year back, we were sitting at office sometime, in Feb, and we heard about this pandemic, and we thought, well, you know what, it's just going to be another flu. We're miles away or thousands of miles away from, the source. Nothing is going to happen. And days later, now we're in a situation where business would like to, create so many digital footprints. Services are being offered on the cloud, on the internet. And we, as a security team, coming from a very conservative kind of, environment where we don't allow anyone to connect to our network, is suddenly having VPNs all over the place. Now, we had 2 options at that stage: deal with it, or find another way, to do something about it. And to be honest, it was really challenging, and the decisions were, mind-blowing, because we had to make decisions on the go. And it's really important to understand, being a security professional in telecom industry, we have a very dynamic kind of environment, and we see things which probably rest of our colleagues do not see. Additionally, it was really important for us to, start making decisions on what are we going to do next. We heard about the lockdown. So we took a couple of things to make things, or we tried to make things back to normal, especially from a security perspective, because we have to now ensure that our infrastructure stays secure. and also at the same time that we do not kind of compromise the services that we offer to our clients. Now, how did we make that abnormal to the new normal? Because there is nothing called normal anymore, I would say. Now, the most important thing was to understand the threat landscape. COVID-19 has actually changed the whole social kind of standpoint. People have lost jobs. There are more people sitting in front of PCs now, and now they want to make money. So they would try each and every single way, you know, to start attacking people. Everyone knows people started working from home. So the whole landscape of how we were protecting stuff and the security controls that we've put in place had to be reshuffled. People now sitting at home, we cannot patch their machines. Proxy is not effective as it used to be. NAC is not effective as it used to be. And we're seeing VPN connections, which is freaky, to be honest. Now, what do we do? So the first thing we did was we had to reassess the entire we had to do a risk assessment from the beginning because the whole threatscape has changed. Probability, impact, everything is new now. Again, from an endpoint perspective, which I think one of our colleagues who just presented a minute back said that 90% of the attacks were happening through emails, which is absolutely correct. We saw each and every type of phishing attack that we've ever can think of. They were all targeting endpoints because people are sitting at home and they know that's the easiest way, you know, to attack them. New concepts were introduced like ESOC. Whoever thought that you can start monitoring from home, which was a disaster, to be honest, at the beginning, because the whole coordination, the whole correlation between people, forget about technology, was so challenging. We had to go look into new IOCs. We had to, you know, relook into EDR. So a lot of detection was happening in terms of endpoint, but response and proactive response was something which was lacking. And that was something we have kind of, you know, invested heavily on in terms of retweaking the way we have deployed that in place. Now, creative awareness is something which is very important as well, because now you do not have access to people. So how do you make sure that they read your content? So we have heavily used social media to find ways to, you know, educate our end users. And I think finally, or I would say, you know, defense in depth was, you know, a strategy where we have to reshuffle our controls, more becoming a network centric or network security centric to more endpoint and also, you know, remote access centric. And we had to automate things. So whether we were ready for that or not, the pandemic has actually made us automate things because there was stuff which was impossible to be done out of office. So again, to answer your question in a nutshell, I would say, well, it's the new normal. There's nothing called normal, but it's the new normal. So this is what we're kind of, you know, going through.
Awesome. Thanks, Ahmed. I think so that kind of sums up things that you've been managing. And I want to pivot to Sagir before I go to Samir. I had discussions with you, sir, and you guys have some amazing perspectives. So let's hear from you, Sagir, sir, your understanding of the new normal.
See, as this very comprehensively explained by Mr. Ahmed, see, for me, normal is the word which doesn't exist in the world, especially in the world of information or cybersecurity, because every moment is changing as it's moving from behind to next, and this is getting abnormal. Every day, attacks are evolving, attackers updating themselves, things are changing. Before I was listening one of the presentation, that first was a virus, then network, then IPS, IDS, and then we are keep evolving. So if we talk anything normal, it means we are behind that moment. So how we tackle this? We need to come up with a predictive approach. So what does predictive approach mean? We should not assume that anything is under control or anything is a normal. We should keep predicting, keep analyzing, keep understanding what the changing patterns of the attack and changing patterns of the technology and the techniques. Specifically, if I talk about any APT, one day APT is attacking us or the techniques they are using is different. So if we assume this, I taken care all his techniques and this is normal for me, it means I am behind that moment. So I should predict the next, prepare myself for the next, and execute to protect myself for that next upcoming abnormal. So for me, normal is something which doesn't exist. and we need to keep update, keep changing as per the patterns, techniques and the technologies as well. So I think normal doesn't exist. So this is what happens.
Absolutely. So well said, sir. Samir sir, your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think I would. That's a good part of being last in the conversation, because many thoughts that Ahmed and Sagir said, I could resonate with that, and I completely agree. Right? I mean, security is one domain where the normal never existed. Right? I mean, had it been an in-person session, we could have had a notes about how many people have cancelled their vacations at the last moment as a security professional because something went wrong all of a sudden, right? And I think it's something that we, as typically in the cyber domain, have actually got used to. I remember spending a New Year at the airport once with my wife and daughter, getting the cake at 12 o'clock for the operations team, because things were actually going wrong at that time when the rest of the world was actually celebrating or flying off from the Dubai airport. Right? So I think it's something that we have got used to. But what has happened in the last couple of years, especially COVID acting a lot in our favor, that there is a recognition of that effort that the cybersecurity professionals put in, right? So if you look at what has been happening, the breaches, and suddenly this has become a business issue and no longer a cybersecurity or an IT issue. Like what Ahmed was saying, people are, the businesses are worried about making money. And in order to do that, they have to enable the remote working of people. Hence, security has become a necessary evil for the business to invest in, so that the returns keep flowing. So I think it has suddenly become an important element of things, right? And also on the other side, if you think of it from a CISO's perspective, the job is getting difficult every day. If the lines of FireEye and Mimecast, these are the technologies that a CISO would depend on to protect himself or the organization around him. And if there are breaches that are happening, the norm is, yes, definitely it's a new normal, and it's a bit more shattered normal as such, right? My gut feeling is that we will need to get the new normal to resilience. The normal should be expecting a breach and educating the leadership. When I say leadership, the business leadership, the CEOs, the CFOs, the chief commercial officers, about this is obviously going to happen. We are going to have breaches. COVID has shown us that you cannot do away with security. What the discussion should be, what do we do after the breach happens? I think that entire discussion around resilience, right? I think it happens in life. I think it's now happening to cybersecurity, that things will go wrong at some point, and we need to just have a backup plan for that. So to sum up, right, the new normal is, I agree with Sagir that there is absolutely nothing called normal in a cybersecurity professional's job. There were so many times we thought that, why did I even come in this domain? Had I been a normal IT job, it would have been a different thing. So yes, it never existed, but now we have an opportunity with what is happening in the last year or two, to make cybersecurity turn more into the resilience side and possibly bring in some predictability, maybe not from an exact attack or technology perspective, but from a behavior perspective, how we will see security and how our the management peers will see security. So that's my 2 cents, Sarfraz.
Absolutely. It's wonderful hearing some expert insights. So in the interest of time, I'm going to ask each one of you one question each, and I wanted your views. And again, I'll start with Ahmed. Ahmed, in your opinion, working as a CISO, you deal with people, process, and technology, right? And most of the times, we as people coming from vendor world, we focus on technology, but there's an element of process. We talk about people. In your opinion, like if you had to trust one of it, people, process, or technology, or rate them, what would that be?
Well, if you ask any security professional, the answer would be that you still have to manage people, process, technology, and balance to reach to an optimal security level. So in single word or in simple words, I would say you cannot just trust one and say that you're not going to focus on the others. And to give examples, let's say you have the best technologies in place, you have the best people in place and best processes. Now, we have seen a lot of gaps in technology these days. SolarWinds was one of them, correct? Because we were heavily kind of trusting on them, and then we end up knowing that, well, they are not perfect as we thought. The same thing applies to different systems as well. Vendors do sell us solutions which claims to do A, B, C, D. And then we end up becoming their R&D and telling them, that this is missing and that is missing and these are the gaps, and try, giving them, the next patch or the next release. So again, if you look at it, technology cannot be trusted by itself. Again, when it comes to people, I think one of the incidents which we had, and I always refer to, is some time back we had a domain admin account which was compromised in my previous organization. And we kept looking at how exactly that happened. We have the best policies in place, we have the best controls in terms of technology. And while analyzing the whole kind of incident and trying to identify the root cause, it was pretty simple. He used a very common password, and he used it across his old personal accounts. So no matter how you try to strengthen your policy and technology, if people fail, then the entire thing, the entire recipe fails. Again, I think it's the same when it comes to processes as well. It's important that you have up-to-date processes all the time and detailed policies, as some policies can actually cause issues for you. So I remember some time back we released a system where we had strictly said that it should only be accessible from Oman, and it was me who was on vacation and I had to approve a couple of things, and then I remembered that it was me who created that policy. So it's really important that we keep revising, instead of these policies becoming a bottleneck. So if it's about trusting, I think we have to trust 3 of them, and we have to very well balance between them, else we will never reach to an optimum level of security.
Very well said, Ahmed. I think so. We as technology vendors sometimes are guilty of putting technology first, but I think so. Very well put. Sagir Saab, the next question is to you. We saw in its presentation, and something I resonate with, like 10 years back today, you have a choice between 200 different vendors to select from. I'm pretty sure every day 5 vendors would give you a call, Fortune 100 companies saying, hey, we are the next silver bullet, we want to solve all your problems. So when it comes to choice of technology, do you trust big names or do you trust big disruption? So there could be a disruption into a new field by a very small unknown vendor. And how do you balance that? How do you ensure you make cybersecurity work for yourself?
See, this is a very good question. And yes, you already said that we are facing this every day. For me, choosing between the good names or good thing good names or no. So first I need to see what is my requirement. What are my pain points? What are the challenges I am facing? So my first focus must be that if big name is taking care or no. If someone even new in the market, but having all the requirements which is meeting my requirement and my big challenges or my pain points, I must not ignore just because a big name is there and having the same technology, even my requirements are not meeting. So for me, if I will be selecting, my first preferences will be my pain points. Like Mr. Ahmed was explaining in the previous question, the COVID situation. So even in COVID situation, everyone is working from home suddenly. Only 7% of the people manpower in organization were using the remote VPN. So this was a sudden requirement. If I am relying on the big names, I'm not against the big names. I'm just giving example. If I'm just relying on the big names and ignoring my requirements, maybe I will suddenly buy all the services providers who are handling the VPN solution, the VPN services. But at the end, after deploying, I'm going to crash and ending up not meeting my requirements. So first, I should list down my requirements, my challenges, my pain points. Then I should focus on the solutions, what solution I need, which solution fulfill my requirement. And then I focus on the names. That yes, name is important. Gartner and these things are already listing the peoples based on their technologies, based on their capabilities. So then I should go at them. My priority should be my challenges, my pain points, my requirements. So regardless who is giving, how is giving, and how is meeting. So this should be my for me. This should be main point for me.
Okay, so it's level playing field for you. As long as they solve the problem, you would not distinguish between them. And I think that's a great thing. Look at your requirement, whatever meets it, whether it's a new company or an established company, my solution should be met, right? Great point.
How deep are your pockets as well, right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, yes, that too. My last question is to Mr. Samir Sheikh. CISOs, right? Often called Chief Information Security Officer, but in our circle also called Chief Sacrificial Officer, right? What do you call CISOs to be? Are they sacrificial officers or the security officers?
Very interesting question, right, Sarfraz? I think many people will now go up and change the definition of CSO on the LinkedIn profiles now. But it's the reality, right? I think what happens is it's very common nowadays, right? So if you follow the life cycle of a breach in a company, you will see that in many companies, right, which is not the right thing to do, but it does happen that you will possibly see the CISO out of job if there's a major breach that happens, or they might just take out the security operations person, right? So it is about finding out that person and taking him out of that equation. Now, it's not black and white. Nowadays, you see that lesser and lesser. But a few of these things, right? I mean, if you think of it from a CISO's perspective, what does a CISO practically do? He or she comes with his domain knowledge from a security perspective, marries that with the organizational thing, sells the concept to the larger organization, and tries to implement certain things. While they're doing it, the ecosystem matters. So you have an internal ecosystem, which you can possibly control through few things. And then you have an external ecosystem. Like we spoke about the breaches that happened with the solar, wind, things that started from there. A lot of big names fell down after that, right? Now, what does a CISO do in such a thing, right? My mind always goes back to the 737 MAX incidents that happened just over a year back. Very unfortunate incidents, right? And when you think about it, what happened? It was something that went wrong with an aircraft, and unfortunately, a lot of airlines, including one airline, here in this region, which had a big fleet size of the 737 Maxes, they had to ground their fleet, right? And you will see over a period of time, possibly the head of the flight dispatch or the chief commercial officer has been moved out or moved in a different role. And this is possibly, this is a similar reflection of what happens on the security side. But for a moment, I would like to take the other side of the story. Why does it happen? Suppose you're the CEO or the CFO for a company, and somebody comes to you, right, with two people bringing two proposals. One proposal says, sir, you give me $10 million this year, I'm going to give you a revenue of $20 million. Yeah, very simple. Second guy comes in, I need that 10 million, and I will try to protect you for something. And then the next question is, what is your assurance that this will happen? Then we throw some risk numbers like likely or probable or stuff like that. And then the person says, okay, will this money suffice? Are you assuring me that when things go wrong, or if I invest this, things will not go wrong? And then we don't have an answer for that, right, folks? And I think this is the problem. Right? The actual problem is, how do you educate the boardroom about the uncertainties that come in? I think the finance domain has done it very well. So you see things like fund hedgings and all that, which happen properly, right? But security, I think that's I'm a big fan of educating the senior management. That is where the actual thing starts. If you can bring it to the table about what is it that you do as a job, what does it do for the company, and then have that conversation, I think this will reduce, and it has to reduce, guys. I think we're all senior professionals here. If it continues like this, a lot of us will be ending up in the hospitals with chronic diseases very early. Worse still, you will have the young blood will not come out to this domain. It will become such a difficult place to work. And if I hope at first that never happens, but if CSO becomes the chief sacrificial officer, we as this profession, we will be in a very bad shape. So yes, I agree. Today it is the scenario, but education of the ecosystem, I think that's the right way to go ahead and avoid it or prevent it from happening, and that's in our hand.
Absolutely. I was reading somewhere by 2025, they're saying every board will have a cybersecurity board with every company, and so that would help alleviate some of the stress that you gentlemen face in your daily life. And hopefully, I think so. You'll be at the forebearers in terms of driving this change, at least in this region. So thank you so much. I think so. We are up on time. I want to kind of leave the floor for some questions for this interesting set of panels. I know there was one question from my keynote with Dr. Mohammed, and I'd like to take it towards the end, but I kind of want to leave for this wonderful panelists, if our audience has wants to hear some words of advice on any topics they feel relevant.
All right, great. We have one question here. It says that what should be our approach when we are visiting or when we are approaching to board of directors and asking them for more budget for cybersecurity for the upcoming year?
Can I take this?
Absolutely.
Yes, please go ahead.
I see smiles all across.
I will tell you, hack into their account. And this is, I'm talking out of experience. This is not, and we have done that. See, one of the big things, and I remember in the early days in Emirates, one of the objectives for that year, right, bring about a paradigm shift in information security awareness. It took me some time to understand what it meant. Then we had to work upon it, right? And that is where it started. Nothing works as easy as connecting with the board, senior board members as human beings. They have their own uncertainties. And we did that. I remember one of the very senior people in the company. We used to do some demos and get some people to show him. I said, it's all properly set, right? We asked him to make an update on his Facebook account. And what actually reflected, and this is from a company laptop, he's actually working and trying to make a change. And what actually reflected on Facebook was completely different. And that came as a shock because this person was responsible for the corporate communications, right? They suddenly see that all these 20 emails that you would have said, that expression of seeing it, we had someone's, while talking, we let a person capture their videos without knowing about it. And it goes back to their personal life. And this is my belief that you have to connect with the board members, tell them where it hurt, show them the thing, how it really happens, and then it'll be easier for you to sell the message. Because if you tell them the stats like we got a 20% increase in the viruses coming into the network and 200% increase in the IPS things, guys, it's very difficult to sell it. They think it is techie talk, but if my Facebook is broken into, or my phone has started my video recording without me knowing about it, it actually hits them immediately. And this has been my experience, and I will be happy to hear how others have done it. But this has been my baby, this engaging the businesses and making that awareness thing. But yeah, other panel members, we're happy to hear what your experience is.
I cannot agree more, to be honest, because this is how I started my career. So I had this management kind of executive management awareness session, and usually you see that people demoing stuff or showcasing statistics which are in North America and other parts of the world. And that didn't make sense to me. I was really young. So I hacked into one of their accounts and I showcased to them and basically it freaked them out. But again, it has its pros and its cons. So I don't think we need to be careful. There has to be a disclaimer. Some were freaked out, some were freaked out from me. So I had to, fix that image. But yes, definitely connecting with them by showcasing to them, what matters to them is the most important thing. And I think that applies to executive management and also the end users as well. Because most of the time, it's important that they understand that whatever they're doing, it's also impacting them, and there might be, some liability issues which applies to them as well. So the connection and creating that relationship is definitely extremely important. So freak them out, but be careful how you freak them out. That's my piece of advice.
I want to add here one thing that CISO is just involved in a top technical guy. So CISO should come out from this and start involving themselves as a finance as well. If some technology or service or product, cybersecurity you are bringing, what is the return of this investment you need to show to the board of management? Because top guys don't understand the technical languages. They only understand the language of money. So how much they are getting, how much they are giving. So if they're giving me 1 million, what return they will get, they understand only this language. If I can explain them very clearly and comprehensively, and they got what I want to say, that what money they are getting back or saving based on that, there will be no resistance for them. This is my understanding, opinion, and up to some experience as well. So I will add this, that we should start thinking that how are we interpreting our technological terms into finance, into money? So it will
Return
result for return
great
on.
point. Yeah, Ardeep, I know we are short on time. Any other question?
Yes, one last question. I guess people are not tired of hearing from all of you. So last question is, keen to see what the thoughts are of the panel on ROI calculators from vendors.
All right, I think so. It's a great question for three of you. I would like all of you to have a go at it. If you want us to repeat, I see smiles on the faces. So, but yeah, who wants to go first?
Sagir, I think you should start.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, absolutely. Keen to see what the thoughts are of the panel on ROI calculators from vendors.
ROI calculators from vendors.
So how we calculate ROI from the vendors, right?
No, vendors, when they give the ROI, they might say, oh, you invest $1 and you get $5 out from us.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you trust it? Do you use it, or do you take it with a pinch of salt?
See, okay, this is fine. This is like a good question. See, return on investment, if I am talking about like what I'm saving, if I'm buying one technology, what I'm saving from that. See, if I buy one email security solution and 300,000 email I'm getting per month, and more than 3,000 spam passing every month, and the most of that I'm putting more resources to analyze this, and people are reporting this, I'm analyzing them. It means instead of getting return of investment, I'm putting more resources, more investment to analyze this. It means the technology I purchased, instead of going in the benefit, and now I'm going on the negative side. I'm spending more and more and more. So I need to be very precise when I'm selecting the vendor, when I'm selecting the technology, when I'm selecting the service which I'm really looking for, and that how much extra I am paying on this to maintain this technology to meet my expectations. So return of investment should be in terms of return something, not adding more or spending more on that. So this is what I understood there.
Okay, awesome. Samir, you want to have a go at this?
Yeah, I think there was a time when everybody was trying to find that rosy return on security investment, right? But I think I have a slightly different thought, that it is very difficult to justify certain things we do based on the ROI model traditional, right? So if somebody comes and tells me, you can go historically backwards and say that things that impact the business. See, if you have 200 viruses coming every minute into the network, and if they are getting neutralized, it is not an issue, right? What you have to possibly look at is, if you had a downtime because of a DDoS attack and your e-channel of selling went down and you're no longer able to do that commerce, or in the aviation domain, if your flights got delayed and your gate time, you had to stay at the gate for even 15 minutes longer than it is allotted, it goes into thousands of dollars, right? Those things, if your technology can avoid that, then yes, there is a conversation in terms of the return on security investment. But I think if you're trying to sell security to the organization based on an ROI, vendors will try to do that. Of course, it's part of what they do. But a CISO should not try to fall into that trap. It happens in certain things. I had a very good example when I was working with the business and we were launching some changes to our loyalty program. It's a huge loyalty program and it was going through everything. And security's contribution to that program was to give the comfort to the customers, the people who are buying that loyalty card, to ensure that their data will be protected. Right, and we will do an X number of things so that it doesn't. And that was the time, unfortunately, one of the big airlines loyalty program had got breached, right? Because people had started monetizing the loyalty points, and if I have some Skywood points, it is worth some dollars anyway. So that is one way where you can work with a business, and they actually invested in that. They said, yes, what you're saying makes sense. This will give us more comfort, and it actually went as a part of the marketing material that we are taking care of your data, so it doesn't get breached, and you don't lose your money and all that. So yes, under certain circumstances where you can have a business proposition like this, yes, it is manageable. But if somebody manages to give someone an ROSI, a practical ones, I think it will be wonderful. But I think it is a difficult set. Has been a difficult.
What you're saying is you can never show an ROI on a black swan event, right? So yeah.
See, I want
Ahmed, your thought.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
want to
sorry.
see, even though this is like very premature or on the early stages, but time is coming when if CISO wants to come on the executive position with the board members, he need to start working on this. See, Samir was talking about the DDoS attack. So if there is a DDoS attack, and we have calculated if 1 minute our service is down, it lost us like 10 million. If I'm talking about some financial sector or banking industry. So if I survived in 10 gig attack or more attack for 3 minutes, when my service was unable to mitigate the attack, it means I saved the bank for 3 minutes and I saved 30 million. So we need to start talking this terms. This is new. I know this is very early. Nobody, even board members, are not aware that CISO can talk like this, and CISO should talk like this. But we need to start talking and thinking like this to realize our like presence in the organization. We are not just a technical geeks to solve the technical issues. Unless we will not show our presence and our importance in terms of money, we will be on same technical level. This, I think, I know this is premature, but one day we will reach up to this level.
Absolutely wonderful. Ahmed, your thought.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic, to be honest, and I think I agree a bit from what Samir and Sagar said. So my perspective on this is the kind of the ROIs which you usually get from the vendors. It's like when you go buy a Porsche or something. You have the mileage stuff and so on, and it all depends how you drive it, right, and how you use that car. So it's more of a selling point. However, it's not really that easy to go and measure it up. If you're a service provider such as us and we're trying to sell a service, then it's very easy to calculate the ROIs. It's not that difficult. But if you're spending a lot of money to protect the organization, mostly your CFO and all the executives would say he's just buying extra tools just to have fun with them. So from that perspective, again, I think one of the initiatives that we have started is to create detailed reports in an infographic kind of manner, which showcases, the ROI in terms of, if this wasn't there, then this would be, the loss. And I think this is what Sagar was trying to explain, but more in a fun way, not necessarily in numbers, to be honest, to showcasing that these were, the number of ransomwares, for instance, which were hit, or certain organizations were hit with, and we had like 0 number of, infections, which has actually solved us approximately $1 million, because the average rate of a market where the bad guys are actually asking for ransom is $1 million, something that the board or the executives start appreciating. So the numbers which comes with the vendor, sometimes it's good to use them, but they're not practical because it all depends how you set your own objectives. So if you have clear objectives, then you can always showcase the return of investment, not necessarily in a dollar value, but again, in terms of the value you're bringing to the organization.
If I get 30 seconds, I think that point of dashboards, and maybe not forward-looking, but retrospectively, if you are giving those dashboards, saying that, well, we protected so many things. For instance, we protected so much of downtime, which is possibly easiest to calculate, or possibly prevented some regulatory fines, and against the investment which was made earlier. So I think that retrospective thing works well, where you have said that I took $1 million from you, but the way I have used this $1 million over the last 12 months is it has protected you for say a couple of millions extra. So that is definitely one thing I suggest. I support that. And the other thing is,
kind of we are really short on time, so I need to really cut this. But this has been a wonderful session. Hardeep, over to you. I really love this conversation. I'm sure we can have a whole day. I had a couple of more questions, but really, in the interest of time, I have to call it. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. And we are a little bit over time, but I would say it was worth it. So yeah, thanks a lot. We wanted to know both sides of story, and you all narrated the story in the best way possible. So thank you so much, all of you.
Usually when you have, the physical events, they say you're between the lunch and the event. Right now, we are between the $500.
You are actually between the $500.
People are looking for the Amazon gift card.
Yeah. Oh yes, absolutely. That's the part which is coming up now. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Let me start sharing my screen again. Okay, so the panel discussion is over, ladies and gentlemen, and finally we are at the most exciting part of the event, which probably a lot of you were waiting for. I know I was waiting for. So yes, I guess warm up your fingers. And here comes your first question. So this is from Dr. Mohammed and Sarfaraz's discussion. I hope so that in order to answer the question, you can use the same section which you were using to ask the question. So here it goes. First question, 3, 2, 1. Here it is. In which area of cybersecurity Dr. Mohammed will invest if he has extra $1 million today? Your options are machine learning, AI, human augmentation, and firewall. I will wait for 10 seconds for, all right. Okay, I will give it another 10 seconds. I'm getting a lot of answers already in the section. Some are right, some are wrong. I will take the first correct answer from the list. Right, 3, 2, 1, time's up. Okay, so the first person who answered it correctly was Mr. Anandi Sekhar Gounder. Congratulations, Mr. Anandi. You won yourself a voucher of $100. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
What the correct answer was? Can you tell us what the correct answer was?
Yes, absolutely. The correct answer was human augmentation, C. All right, moving on to the next question, question number 2. Warm up, ladies and gentlemen, here it comes. This comes from Kausik's presentation. In the federal agency example I showcased, what % reduction in document download to endpoints are they seeing as a result of deploying Menlo? Your options are 25%, 50%, 70%, 90%. Okay, I see all the buttons glowing up immediately. Let me take a look. All right, so the correct answer is C, 70%, and the person who actually gets it right the fastest is Mr. Omar Al-Dwek. Congratulations, Omar, for winning $100. After the event is over, you will receive your gift voucher on your email. Thank you so much. All right, moving on. The third question. We have 3 more left, so you have still a chance of winning $300. All right, here it goes. The third question, 3, 2, 1, here it is. What are the 2 ways a SOC can deal with alert overload without increasing the size of the team? I do not have multiple choice this time, so I'm hoping someone will actually guess the answer right. Let's see. right. I'm seeing some of the interesting answers actually pouring in the chat section. I'll give it another 5 seconds and then we will select the best answers of all. All right, so out of all the answers, the best answer we have got is from Mr. Abdul Baki, which says reducing the false positives and accelerating the triage. Congratulations, Mr. Abdul Baki. You just won yourself another $100 US. Okay, 2 more left, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. So your next question is, Cyclectis predicts attacks by aggregating IOCs from third-party threat intel sources. Simple options, right or wrong? Go for it. All right. Simple question, right or wrong? I see lots of rights, lots of wrongs in the chat section. Let's see. All right, so the correct answer is wrong. This is not what Cyclectis does. And the first person to got that right was Mr. Mandeep Sharma. Congratulations, Mr. Mandeep, for winning $100 US. All right, last one. $100, only $100 left. Right now, what is the most risked asset? Our cloud, our users, our network, our attention, all of the above. Interesting option D, our attention. All right, last question. Okay. All right, so the correct answer is actually E, all of the above. And the first person who got the answer right is Mr. Kutlu Dermas. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but even if I'm not, you still won $100 US. So very, very congratulations. Thank you. Well, that concludes our question answer round, our quiz round. I hope some of you are going very happy with knowledge, or some of you are going home with some money. In the end, I would like to just thank all the presenters. First of all, it was a great session, and I would like to thank all the attendees for joining in for 2 hours, more than 2 hours. I hope it was helpful. You guys made this event successful. After the end of this event, you will receive an email from our side, which will have recording of the whole event, so you can review it, revise it, and if anything resonates with you, if you want to know something more about any specific topic or solution, then feel free to reach out to us. The details will be mentioned in the email which you will receive, which will have the link of the recording, or alternatively you can write to us at marketing@spectrami.com. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope I'll see you, some of you, most of you, or all of you soon. Have a great day ahead. Thank you so much.